So today is day one of my documenting the process of trying to cultivate a loving practice, in returning to that to that practice. I recently moved across the country and have really fallen out of all of my routines, all of my practices, and all of that. And one of the things I'm so excited about being able to do in my new city is building community. And that feels so important to me. Now, when I talk about building community, what I mean specifically is that I'm looking for deeply satisfying liberatory relationships, right? And I've talked to a few people about this. Like, I have clients who I help do this. And one of the things that I've noticed for all of us is that one, I think we tend to overuse the word liberation without actually being particularly clear about what we mean when we say liberation. I think we have like a feeling of what we mean by liberation, but not like a specific definition that we're working with. And then also, I think there's this idea that liberation is this thing that exists like out there in the future. It's what we're working toward. And I don't see liberation that way. I see liberation as something that we're actively co creating every single day. And so I wanted to go through this process of actually getting very clear and specific about what my liberatory values were so that I can begin trying to embody those values with consistency and intention, and weaving those values into my relationship with myself, with my friends, with my family, at work, as well as how I'm trying to approach sort of like collective action for your world, for your future. So, what I have for us today is actually just a very simple Google Sheet that I have adapted from one of my teachers, Tatiana. You can learn more about Tatiana's work over at friendlynooks.com. But basically, all the worksheet is that I have dropped in, I think it's like 134 words that are associated with like liberation or creating a world without violence or oppression. I think is specifically what I was trying to come up with. And then the process is to go through and rate these words 1 to 3, pull out the words that are 3. So these are the ones that I'm identifying as the most important to me. Drop those here, and then start to combine words or pull out what feels the most, even more important out of that list. Getting to a top 5 of these words, and then settling on 2 of them. Now, the reason that I wanted to land on 2 is because I don't know about you, but for me, I can be a little absent-minded. I often feel very busy and overwhelmed. And I just know that if I was trying to every single day hold myself to living into like 20 values related to liberation, I would make myself feel bad. I would just be in such a shame spiral for not being able to actually follow through on that. Whereas 2 values, I think I can actually maintain. And this is obviously a process that I think you can revisit and update as you like learn and grow and find what works for you. So in today's video, I'm actually just going to go through this process and share with you my experience in doing that. If you would like to also identify what your liberatory values are, you can go to lovingpractice.com, and there you can access the downloadable version of everything that you need in order to do this process along with me. So I have actually already gone through it because it's like my 5th time trying to record this video. But what I essentially ended up with is 34 words that I pulled from that main list, as far as these are the words associated with liberation that I felt were the most important to me specifically. And I think it's really important for me to keep emphasizing that this values list is specific to me. And if you were to do this values list, that would be specific to you. And the reason I want to emphasize that is because all the words on this list, I think, generally are quite important. And it's just that because of who I am in the world and who I'm trying to be in the world, some words feel more important than others, especially at this particular moment in my life. So for instance, very quickly, like I highlighted action oriented as one of the least important values on this list. And that doesn't mean that I don't value action. That doesn't mean that I don't take action. What that means is that out of all the things that are on this list, value at being action oriented was the least important to me when it comes to trying to co-create liberatory relationships, right? And the 34 that I pulled out were the words that felt the most important in that co-creation process. Then I went through and started to combine words, filter out words, etc. And I landed on my top 5, which are accountability, commitment, curiosity, devotion, and intimacy. Now, my immediate reaction to this was like, my big Capricorn energy is always so present and so felt because not the top 2 being both accountability and commitment, you know what I mean? But also the words that are here, the reason that I picked them out for my top 5 is because I really experience them as both how I want to show up in my relationships, as well as some of the ways that I think I can begin to approach the relationships in my life through these values. But again, I don't want to hold myself to trying to embody these 5 values all the time because I don't think that I'd be able to do that. And so then I went and I landed on my top 2. So these are my top 2 liberatory values that I have settled on for myself. Again, these are mine. And what I landed on was curiosity and accountability. And those feel really like accurate. I'm not really surprised about those 2 words. And the reason why is like I love learning, I love information, I love ideas, and I love getting to know people. And so with the curiosity piece, I'm starting to think about how I can be more curious about my own experience, how I can be more curious about the people in my life and like really taking the time and effort to learn more about them and their experience in the world. And then also I think being more curious about what kind of world I'm actually trying to create and what is needed of me in order to co-create that world. Um, One of the reasons I pulled out the curiosity out of that top 5 is, for instance, like I was thinking about using the intimacy word, but with intimacy, I feel like being curious about people helps to build intimacy. And so that's sort of this filtering process that I'm doing here. And then accountability felt similar to commitment for me. Um, and I think about them as sort of like 2 sides of the same coin. So I think in being committed in my relationships and how I'm approaching the world and this work is me being committed in that process also means that I have to be accountable to what's needed of me in this process too, or in these efforts. Um, and I know with accountability, sometimes we talk about that as far as like how people respond or take responsibility for like the harm that they've caused or for hurting people. But really, I see accountability as a process that's like not just in response to something and being reactive, but accountability is also a proactive thing and about being committed and taking responsibility for the people in your life. And so then I'm also thinking about with the accountability piece, where do I need to be accountable in my own life? Where do I need to practice accountability in my interpersonal relationships? And again, what is being asked of me on the collective level to be accountable in the co-creation of a liberatory world and these liberatory relationships, like on a global scale? So those are my top 2 values and the type of questions that now I want to begin exploring in order to see how I can like embody those values, how I can live into those values every day. Well, not literally every day, but like most days. And I want to invite you to also go through this process of identifying what your liberatory values are and getting very clear and specific about what those values are for you and what is being asked of you by yourself or from yourself, from your people, collectively, in order to then live into those values and the responsibility that you might have to co-creating the world, or a liberatory world aligned with those values. So again, if you're interested in doing this process with me, go to lovingpractice.com, where you can find a link to access the spreadsheet, the instructions, and all of that good stuff. And if you're interested in learning more about me, about my work, there is a previous video that I posted last week called "Why is Conflict So Hard?" and what you can do about it. So make sure that you go and check that video out. Bye.